avenue they want to go down. Marketing's so vast.
Pause 1 second. This is doomed, this one.
I know.
Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, in true children's entertainer style. I welcome you to another unedited conversation with me, Ed Gould, and I am recording this intro directly after recording the conversation that we've just had with Haley McPherson. And this conversation is all about marketing in the specialist finance world. And this is an area of that I didn't know that much about, and what has been brilliant, I've learned so much about it from the conversation you're about to hear, is there's so many parallels. So if you're a marketer or you're a business that's dependent on relationships, this unedited conversation is for you, because Enra, which is I think the second biggest specialist finance house in the UK, and Haley tells us all about it, is highly dependent. About 70% of its income is generated through intermediaries, people selling their product on, their finance on. And if you're in a business that relies on intermediaries or relies on relationship development, you could be in a partner-led business, then I've asked Haley what really the good tips are for getting the most out of relationships and making that work from a strategic point of view. Haley is also brilliant in talking to us about how you get the right team in place, and she also passes on some brilliant tips, which are sort of third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 700th passed down advice, but it's the old ones that are the best ones. So listen till the end for that. And as a special treat, and in true unedited style to prove it's unedited, if you watch this video VOD or you listen to this podcast very carefully, you may just notice the moment where our wonderful Donna comes into the studio, switches all of the lights on and interrupts the podcast. We've left it in because we're nothing if not honest, because unedited, that's what we're about. So I'd like to leave you with one thought. If you're listening to this podcast and going, hang on, I'm a marketeer, I've got a story to tell, I've got something interesting to say, prove it. Head over to the website, The Unedited Show, and send in your details, and we'll get in touch and we'll see if you can appear on a future episode of The Unedited podcast. So all it leaves for me to say is I hope you're well, sit back, relax, and let's get ready for another unedited conversation. Thank you for joining me, Haley. As I was saying a couple of times, because we stopped and started on this beginning, we were chatting before, and I said, let's stop, because if we keep talking too much, we'll run out of our conversation.
Yeah.
So I always ask at the beginning my guests to introduce themselves rather than me have to learn absolutely everything about you, although I'm doing my reading. So do you want to tell us who you are and what you're doing and what your background is?
Yeah, so I'm Haley McPherson. I'm currently Group Marketing Director at Enra Specialist Finance. We are a large property lender in the UK. We're actually the second largest property lender in the UK. I've been there for about 5 years as Group Marketing Director, and I've actually been in marketing since I was 21, so 17 years? I had to think now.
Okay. Yeah, do the sums.
That's quick maths.
The reason we were keen to talk to you and is because it's quite a specialist space that we're talking about.
Very.
I think it would really help our listeners to understand a bit of an overview of how that specialist finance world works.
Yeah, of course. So specialist finance, so our business started 20 years ago in bridging finance. Everything that we do is related to property, so property backed. So we cover everything from mortgages, residential, buy-to-let, second charges, but we also then do bridging and development finance. So it's all finance that you would probably need in the property life cycle, buying properties, renting properties, building properties, developing land, that kind of thing. So it's all around that kind of space. It's very much an industry that's grown massively. A lot of people, it's technically specialist because a lot of lending you can get from the high street. You've got all your high street banks, but they have quite strict criteria, and they maybe need people with a bit more vanilla credit. Specialist industry comes into its own there because we will look a little bit wider than that. We have different funding lines, so we're able to look at the person, look at the individual, look at the deal, and kind of make a little bit more of a manual decision. It's kind of when the high street isn't the right place for lending. And some of the projects that we cover, the high street is just not for them anyway. So specialist in its term is probably because it's a bit more special for the individual or a bit more special for the property or the project.
Okay. And so just to make it clear in my mind and the listener's mind, I'm not, am I coming to you directly or am I working through third parties, or how does it work in
Depends.
terms of how
A
the
lot of
money
our
gets spread
a lot of
around?
our business is via intermediaries. So obviously a lot of the products that we offer are regulated. So they need a broker, there needs to be advice. Some of the bridging and development finance, some of that's unregulated. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. It just means that you could come to us as a developer directly. So both.
Okay.
But most of our business is intermediary led.
And so, as me and you are both most interested in that marketing side of that, you've got these two different levers that you're pulling: relationships with large scale developers,
Yeah.
house builders, etc., and then relationships with intermediaries that the broker that sells on. Okay. Okay. So you've got a lot of relationships to deal with
Yeah.
from a marketing point of view. Okay. Before we get into, I'm really keen to get a bit more into what that really looks like in terms of activity, work, the stresses, the opportunities, etc., within that space. But how do you? You've been doing this for 17 years. What's your evolution been into the industry?
Probably not anything specific to do with finance. I've kind of worked in a variety of industries. My first role was in maritime security, that then led into cyber security. The role after
Okay.
that was optics and 5G, kind of transceivers and cables. And then from there, straight into specialist property finance. So it's
But
not like
this is
I
one of the
ever.
things that stood out, to be honest. So you've got that, and that's useful because as a listener, I, I'm in an agency world, so I get to dip into all these different businesses.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people are often quite interested in is when they've been in one place and one specific area, they don't know if the grass is always greener. But
Yeah.
you have a great
Yeah.
opportunity to tell us. So you've tried some different types of places and products, and you've really found, because you're now the group marketing director for
Yeah.
the second largest business. What's made it stick for you? What do you love about marketing this sort of product and solution?
I just like the business with this one. I think it's the place that I am. I've only ever had sort of three big companies in my career, but this one I just know that I'm going to stick at. I just love the people. I think as a marketeer or any specialist service function that goes into an industry, you have to learn it. A lot of the people in my business have been in the business for a long time because you naturally are quite niche. So you'll move in a very niche set of circles. None
Mm.
of my team come from specialist finance, but they're expert marketeers. And I think you can market, you just need to learn your product, learn your industry, your segments, your personas, and then you can probably market anything.
Yeah.
I came into this industry. I wasn't they approached me. They were looking for someone who had experience when it came to rebranding and building new strategies. And I've done that sort of twice over. I've done big rebrands in other companies, sort of global M&A transactions. So I wasn't kind of thinking, oh, I'm going to go work for a bridging firm. But they
It was
approached
more the
me.
marketing challenge that stood out,
Yeah,
was it?
that's what I loved. I looked at the business and I thought this business looks amazing. I kind of looked at the people. I met the COO and I met the CEO, and I just knew that I wanted to work there. They welcomed me. That's it. 5 years ago, I couldn't have told you what a bridging loan was, but they took a lot of time to invest in me, training me on products, getting me to meet all different people across the business. The key stakeholders spent a lot of time training me up on how the business and how the industry works. And I think that's what has kept me. I love the people. I love the
I
energy.
think you're putting what makes good marketeers are people that are interested in getting under the hood of something.
Yeah, I just
And
love
you
to learn about new
mentioned,
things.
yeah, my catchphrase, stay curious. It's not really I'm going to make it a catchphrase now. Let's stay curious. Because as soon as you stop being interested in those things, it's very
Yeah,
hard. And you mentioned before we came on the call that you've actually started building up the team there.
yeah, yeah,
And I suspect that you recognize those same traits in those people that stood out.
absolutely.
So before we get into the meat of the sandwich, what do you think makes a good marketeer then, out of interest?
Someone who wants to learn. Someone who just, I think some of the favorite things that I've been able to do in my career is just develop people. I've had lots of graduates. I've had lots of people coming in who don't quite know which avenue they want to go down. Marketing's so vast. You can go specialism into digital. You could go into a little bit more.
Pause 1 second. Sorry.
So sorry. Sorry, I didn't realise you're in there. Turn these lights off.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye. This is doomed, this one, isn't it?
I know.
So, dear listener, we have just been rudely interrupted in the Black Box studio here at Carswell Gould HQ. And Donna, our wonderful Donna, who, with my agency hat on, is one of the best PR people in the business, didn't read her Teams to say we were recording today, so missed that. So, Donna, naughty. So we come back. I asked you the question, what makes, apart from reading your Teams message to make sure you don't interrupt the podcast, what makes a great marketeer in your eyes?
Yeah. So, like I said, someone who just wants to learn. I think someone who is willing to listen, someone who is willing to just get stuck in. Marketing is so diverse. It has so many different areas to it. There is one day you're doing social media, one day you're writing content, one day you're doing PR, one day you're on a creative campaign. So you have to be able to sit and learn. You have to be willing to roll your sleeves up. You kind of have to be willing to drop what you're doing at any second to go and do something else. So you kind of just have to be in it and throw yourself in. I think
especially
people.
You know, when you're in an organization that sounds like it's growing fast and it's in a space where it feels like an agency vibe that you've got to be flexible and willing to 100%. Turn your hand to different things in that space.
I tell my team half the time to act like an agency, and I kind of ask the business sometimes to treat us a bit like an agency. I think sometimes in a lot of industries, every industry I've been in, marketing sometimes is a little bit undervalued. I'm quite lucky where I am now that people are really understanding the value of marketing. It's not just, I'm going to coin it, but it's not just the colouring in team. They see...
you're talking to a creative director. Yeah. They think I'm chief colour-inner.
Yeah, but I think businesses are starting to see the value of like return on investment and how marketing can drive revenue. And that kind of just means, I say to the business, don't come and tell my team what you need. Don't say, oh, I've got this, can you send an email? Come to my team with a problem, because marketeers are natural problem solvers. Like, we want to be creative. So come to me and say, I need to get this message out to this person. And then let us go away and work our magic and go to our little marketing menu and pick out all these things and come back with a solution. Like, let us think, let us be problem solvers, and let us be creative.
You sound like an agency person, by the way, which is great.
I've never worked in an agency in my life.
There's actually a bit of a trend, and we're finding we've got lots of different clients, different levels, and what we're finding in some of the larger scale is they are trying to find ways, and we get involved actually as an agency team in now trying to help them understand how they can facilitate more creative thinking in that workspace. And the reason for that is they understand the value of having curious people that bring the outside in and solve problems. It's a hard thing to do consistently, and ways that you can do that are bring guests in to try but it's great that you're talking in that way, because I imagine that the challenge that you've got on, and let's get into the challenges now, are diverse and they're wide. And we talked about these relationship building challenges with intermediaries that you have to support and help them sell. And then you're actually trying to build the brand and, you know, generate value and equity in that brand. So tell me a bit about the remit when they brought you in, what you were trying to do and where you're up to in that, and some of the challenges you've overcome.
Yeah, sure. So I said Enra Specialist Finance was looking for a marketing director at the time. I was working for another company that was based between the Cotswolds and California. So I was doing a lot of back and forth. And they were going through sort of PE transactions, and they needed to do a big rebrand, re-strategize. And they were really, the fortunate thing, and kind of what attracted me, is they were looking to invest time and money in marketing. And that kind of caught my attention, because that means that they cared about marketing.
So it wasn't just a job, it was we want to get this right.
Yeah, the team at the time was really small. I don't think anybody knew what they really did. And that made me feel bad for the team, because they were working really hard, but they probably just weren't getting enough, like, people didn't really get what they were doing. They were just doing emails and social and bits and pieces, but they were really, really good. But I think they just needed someone just to come in, give it a bit of a refresh, new strategies, new ideas. So yeah, they
Okay.
brought me in predominantly to rebrand Enra Specialist Finance, build new strategies, build a new team, and kind of just give it a little bit of a different look. I'm completely external from the industry, and having done large rebrands in other businesses, I think maybe that was interesting to them. I wasn't someone from the industry. I had a different mindset, a different outlook on how things could be. Um, so came in, did started in January of 2020. Really was well looked after. Spent a lot of time trying to immerse myself into the business, and then COVID hit. So that was a challenge for sure. If we're talking about a challenge, trying to rebrand a business when you weren't in it was a bit of a tough
I
one.
think we did about 12. It was one of our busiest times. I mean,
um,
it was an incredible time for in lots of different reasons. So
yeah.
how did it was everyone furloughed? Were you what was
We
the
did
sort of
this, yeah. Well,
situation?
we all worked from home for a good chunk of time, and then there was a small percentage of people that were furloughed. We then
But you
started to
still
go,
have to make progress, don't you? You
yeah,
still got to
and I
try and
still had a
find your way
huge
forward.
task. I was still needing to do a rebrand, but I worked with some really good external creatives that I'd worked with 2 or 3 rebrands before, and we're miles apart, so we could do things. You can do marketing from anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So it was a challenge trying to get everybody that I needed to in terms of stakeholders and all the things that I was thinking, because when I look at brands, there's so many different layers to it. And I wanted to make sure that I was getting it right. Like, brand to me, as a creative, you're a little bit extra with it. Like, brand is emotion, brand is visual, brand is like, it's like multi-sensory is how I kind of talk about it,
Absolutely.
because people see it, people feel it, like, people are emotionally attached to brands because there's a promise with that. And me trying to talk about all this on Zoom to somebody else is like, is this a logo? I'm like, no, it's not a logo. There's 3 meanings to my logo. It's so trying to really get that across. It wasn't a challenge. I mean, it was just different because the whole world seemed like it was falling apart at the time. And there were probably more priorities that the business needed to worry about, apart from me telling them what the logo needed to be. Um,
Hmm.
but no, that was good. So did a really successful rebrand on Enra. Huge kind of new whole visual style, brought in brand heart, like full brand book messaging, kind of stripped it all back, looked at how the industry was and what it actually was that we're doing. And at the crux of it, we're not just lending money, but we're impacting people's lives. So I wanted to bring it back into a real personal level. That sort of residential mortgage could be the first home for a new couple. That second charge mortgage could mean that a parent releases equity for their children to get married. That bridging loan could be the first development or building opportunity for someone in their new business. And I was like, right, this is really emotional. So I kind of took it back to that level, and it's just kind of dealing with real people in the real economy. And that's always difficult because the economy goes up and down.
Well, we're
So
talking and recording at a very specific time where
yeah,
the budget in the UK has just been released, and
yeah,
there's things change on a
yeah,
dime,
exactly.
you know. But I think that staying getting the it's getting a traditional industry, a fairly risk averse, all finance is fairly risk averse, getting them to even consider how they feel about the brand is a brilliant thing to push
I
them to
was
do.
so surprised how well it went down. Like, it went down so well. So if we're talking about what I've done since I've been there, I was then asked to rebrand the lending brand. So
Yeah.
Enra Specialist
So
Finance
you've
is
now got a
the group.
hierarchy of things
Yeah.
going
Well,
on.
Enra Specialist Finance is the kind of group. And underneath that, we have a company called West One Loans. So that's our lending brand.
Yeah.
And then we have a company called Aria Finance, which is our broking brand. So when I was brought in, it was to rebrand the top. So Enra, I work for Enra. My whole team do, but we work across all 3 brands. So we've got quite a big task on our hands. But like I said, Enra Specialist Finance rebrand went so well. I was then tasked to rebrand West One, the lending brand. That's probably the biggest part of our
Yeah.
business. That's gone really well. We had 2 brokerages at the time. Again, went so well that they merged together. So we did a complete build a new brand. Um, so 5 years has been a lot of brand work, but it's also just been
How
about raising.
how do you and often in my world we there's a big difference between developing the brand and activating it. and you've now gone through the brand build bit across a multiple, and then you've got to make it land. Have you noticed, is there any observations of through that journey? Has anything changed, or have the assumptions you made or the decisions you made during that branding process for those three brands, have any of them been proved right or wrong once it's landed, or uh, what's happened once you start to activate all of these new brands?
I think with a lot of the brands, there's a certain, like, the industry itself is very traditional. It's very relationship led. There's a lot of face to face interaction when it comes to deals, which is lovely. I previously been in a very tech environment, and the industry is a little bit. It's not super techy, but sometimes a lot of the personas that we deal with don't necessarily want super techy. So I kind of just looked at a strategy. I kind of came up with a concept that was, once I'd learned about how the industry works, I work on, and I have done for 5 years, relationship led, digitally enabled. So I will
Okay.
always lean into the relationship space, because I'm never going to come into an industry and try and change us into a fintech. It's not what it's about.
And
But
it'll
I
confuse
know,
people.
yeah, but I know as a marketeer who's always looking forward, I need to be advertising and communicating with the next generation of brokers who are in probably 20s and 30s, and they do everything through social media and they use apps, and their technology needs are different. So I kind of have to do a little bit of both. And when I kind of launched the brands with that, I wanted to do a bit more tech than maybe the industry was probably used to. So for the first, do you know what? The business was really accepting of it. And I think I probably went a little bit too raw and a little bit too emotion with some of it, about all of the lovely relationship things that we can do for people's lives. But now we've actually just stayed true. So I think what's actually been really good for the rebrands, and what I thought would happen, is has really started to happen in the past couple of years, not immediately. Talking about how we actually impact people's lives, lending
Hmm.
money to real people in the real economy. That's what I kind of thought about 5 years ago.
Well, that's what matters to, that's the impact of the business. That's the social economic
Yeah.
impact of a
And
business like yours.
nobody, a lot of people at the time weren't kind of talking in that way. It was very much, we manually underwrite, we're the fastest.
Commodity.
Yeah. And it was, there isn't a USP in our industry, because everyone's got the same. If you're bridging, you do it the fastest. If you're underwriting, you always do it manually. It was really hard to find points of difference, because everybody has the same. And now I think generationally, and the internet and apps and the world has changed. People are now looking for more people based content. So we stuck true to ourselves. And I looked at the business and I thought, you know what, these people are real people. They're down to earth. They're doing transactions on a day to day basis. For people who want the money, they're keen, they need to grow, they want to invest, they want to develop themselves. And we were having real conversations with them and trying to make the deal right for them. Like, we've got a duty of care to them. And I think the main thing that was really key when I was thinking about brand was just our consistency. I wasn't ever going to come in
Yeah.
and change what the brand was about. I can change how it looks and I can change how we communicate that. But the core of it was just the energy and the consistency this brand had built. And I wanted to just make sure that my job was then to communicate that better.
And I think when you get that right, and it sounds like reading between the lines, although as marketeers, as creatives, as brand developers, although we're trying to find the special sauce in the business at that point, we're also helping that business understand what they could be. And although you're not trying to change, it sounds like they've developed more energy. If you do it in the right way, it lifts people within the business, and it allows people to feel like they're part of something with purpose. And what I loved, our little pre-chat before, we showed off each other's CIM marketing books that we've got stacked under our computers,
Yeah.
which I don't want to ruin the illusion for anyone watching the podcast. But we're both big fans of heavy textbooks, it
Yeah.
seems. And what I love, and what I find often is a challenge in this industry now, is people have almost forgotten what the difference between marketing communications is and what marketing is. And when you think about all of our P's, that proposition and that purpose, they're what young people and all people now always have. But that's what you're looking for to define some point of difference. What I'd love to ask you about is I understand that a big part of the business is intermediary sold. So the way that you make your money, I think you said something about 70% of part of it is generated by intermediaries. So if I'm thinking we've got listeners that might be in a similar position where they're in partner-led businesses, legal, accountancy, finance. They all have similar relationship-based challenges that they're trying to. Could you speak a bit about some of the tactics and some of the strategies that you put in place to try and better represent and support those intermediaries so you get better results from them?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of I think we spoke kind of before this. A lot of our business, some of our business, you find us through sourcing systems. So probably, if you don't know, it's a bit like if you're going for car insurance and you put all of your details in. So your broker will use a system that will come up with the cheapest, sort of best rate for you as someone who wants to get a mortgage. So that's kind of ranked, and you can't always be the cheapest. So that kind of, it can be, you don't always want to be the cheapest, like just because that's the cheapest car insurance doesn't mean it's the best car insurance. So that's when we then have to think kind of what you've asked there, how do we make ourselves stand out, because we're never, not no one's ever going to have the best pricing all the time. The market moves up and down, and lenders, as you will see in the news all the time, up and down depending on interest rates. Everybody has to move. So we always focus on consistency. Like, you have to be consistent with your messaging. You have to be consistent with your promise and your brand. A huge part of the industry that's led is relationships. It's trust. It's getting the deals done. It's taking a common sense approach to lending. And I think when a broker understands that, they might have a really quirky, complex deal that the high street doesn't want to know about. Some other brokers don't have the experience to deal with something like that. We've been around as a lending business for sort of 20 years plus. We've probably seen every quirky, weird deal. And our underwriting teams have got so much expertise, they know how to deal with that. So it sounds kind of like any other business. It's expertise, it's experience, but that's really true with us, because that broker.
How do you make it manifest? How do you manifest that to the market then? So if I was a broker, what are the channels you've got to actually even communicate? Is it events? Are you sending them stuff, or are they literally, because if they just look at that leaderboard, it's so hard, isn't it?
The full marketing mix. So for brokers, a lot of their businesses is through networks and clubs. So like L&G, sort of the big mortgage clubs. So we advertise a lot with them. So there's lots of events, lots of marketing, lots of case studies, lots of interviews. We then have our own marketing in the team. So we cover the whole marketing mix. We run our own events for our brokers. We then do lots of case studies. We do lots of videos. We do lots of, we try and get out as much as possible and bring the deals to life. So with some of our development and our bridging deals, we'll go out and we'll film the site. So other people can see, I've got a site like that, and we can show ground up to where it's been and how we were involved and where we lent, and try and really just bring the lending to life. I think case studies are a really good way to do that.
If you've got £100 in your cake, how much of that are you dedicating towards, say, stuff that adds humanity, physical elements, events like that, filming
as
stuff?
much as possible? Like I said, my strategy, relationship-led, digitally enabled, right? And I knew that. That's how this industry works. They like face-to-face interaction. There has to be an element of digital to move things forward. So we do still have a lot of great digital channels that we will always use. Our social media channels, we have webinars, we do podcasts, we do lots of video content. But events work really well for us, because you can have the conversations with the people who know the deals, who do the transactions. You can talk to the underwriter, you can talk to the CEO, you can kind of just get a feel for the business and know that we've been doing it a long time. And that, like I said, brands are trust, right? If you come and lend from West One as a lending brand, you'll trust that the job will be done and it will be done well. And I think that there is, you then have to, your job as a marketeer is to maintain that trust. Keep like adding to that trust. And that's kind of, that's just every industry can say it's very relationship driven, but I think there's a lot of similarities across all industries. Relationships with your customer are like the easiest, the hardest thing to make, but the easiest thing to break.
Hell yeah. It takes a second to break it and a lifetime to make it. You spend 20 years
building a brand, and one thing can ruin it in like 2 seconds. And you have to be very mindful of that. I think a lot of it goes to, like, we spend a lot of time looking at the personas that we have.
Yeah.
And then we split our marketing in personas, then we segment underneath our personas. So a lot of our segmentation, so then we can really tailor our messages to the exact client. We've got 5 products across the West One brand, and that's just one brand. And those products have various different audiences, from the intermediaries to someone who might see us online who's a potential borrower. Do you know what I mean? Borrowers will see our brand. They come to us directly for a lot of the stuff, but they will see our brand. So there needs to be a trust and a level of expertise through that. And segmentation and just really getting to know your customer and having great data behind it will allow you to talk the exact messages to the right people. So then they go, do you know what? These guys know what I'm talking about. They understand me. They understand my problems. I think it's too easy to do blanket comms and emails that are just generic about, oh, this is my business. It's great. Like, talk to the person who needs the bridging loan in the Northwest, because you can talk about the pricing and what they're going to get back. Talk to the person in Cardiff because the yields are X in that particular area and why they might want to use particular buy-to-let mortgages at that time. Like, if you're
I
talking their
think that
language.
you're also, in a world where you're talking about very local markets, sounding local in those local markets is a really important thing. It's far more advantageous for you guys to have that on the ground sort of
Yeah.
view, I would
We
have
have a
thought,
huge
than
national sales team, and our guys are all over the UK. And I think that's a huge strength for us, because then our marketing can be regional, and we do regional events. So we do events north, south, east, west, everywhere. Our business started in London, but we've now kind of grown all the way across the UK really
yeah.
successfully. And we can talk to people in different markets, because different markets, different areas of the country have different needs, and the economies
Yeah.
are slightly different, and house prices are different. And so you've
Well,
got to
I'm thinking
understand
of
that.
a friend of mine that's probably well within one of your customer base in terms of a private landlord,
Yeah.
and I'm
Does he
thinking,
need a buy to
what
let?
sort of yeah, he is. He says, yeah, he is. And, depending when you're listening to this podcast, he may have lost all his houses or have kept them, depending on what's going on with the government at the moment. And
Yeah.
for context, there's increase in stamp duties and a number of other taxes that the Labour government are bringing in that will have an impact on industry like yours. And it will actually come down into us as well. And you sort of recalculate. But one thing that you want at a time like that is a trusted partner, and I think you get
Absolutely.
that from that local. He's in Manchester. He would rather be talking to someone that
Yeah.
is on the ground in
Yeah.
there and sounds and
Exactly.
talking
Yeah.
about. So I
And that's what we
completely
do.
support that idea. It's good.
Trusted partner
Um,
is actually one of the big statements on our website.
hey, I guessed it. What? So you've built these brands
Yeah.
and you're activating it, and it sounds like you're giving the sales teams real good opportunities to get in there and sell. So when you think about the future, as you look across the next year or so, what are those big challenges? And I think we're talking about one, which is the changing world of politics, and that's settling
Yeah.
down. But what do you see the marketing challenges are that you're looking forward to getting your teeth into, or scared witless by, or whatever, whichever way you want to present that? But what sticks out for you over the next year or two?
I think some of the challenges that we will always have, and it comes with the economy, is just keeping up to date with an ever-changing product set. My team have to be one of the big things that we focus on is working really closely with the product teams. If we don't know what's changing when the pricing's happening, and I think that's always been a problem, but obviously everyone was being kind of anticipating new government changes. Everyone was kind of waiting to see when that happened and then what the budgets were going to be, because you always have to be ready and on your toes. And that will never change. So that's kind of an ongoing thing for us. We have to be ready. We have to work really closely with product, because then as soon as product changing and pricing changes and criteria changes, that's when we have to lean into our segments and our personas and go, right, this is going to change for this particular segment. We need to communicate this. This is going to change for this other segment. So we need to communicate this. A lot of it will just be pricing, the things that we need to talk about. But why does that matter? How is it going to benefit you? Why could you use this product? Because this situation has happened. So I think that's really big for us. From a team perspective, probably a little bit closer. We're growing as a business, which is wonderful. It's grown every year on there since I've been there. And I think one of the things with that is that my team is kind of getting thin. um,
Getting
it's a it's
thin.
a it's a lovely problem to have. I don't mean getting thin, like we're a bit thin on the ground. I think the lovely thing is that I thought it was a problem, capacity, demand, but it just means that they're loving what we do. I kind of have to go when the team and we're all going, oh my God, we're flat out, we're busy. I kind of like that in a way because it means that the business like what we do. It means that the business need our help. It means that we're obviously delivering something that people want to use so much that they just keep coming at our door. That's going to be ongoing. Um, I'll hope that I can grow my team even wider to make sure that they've got the bandwidth to allow themselves to grow as well. I want to make sure that all of my team continue to develop. I want to make sure that they focus on themselves and like learning and development. And that's a big part for me leading the team.
I mean, you're really wrangling with some of the key challenges that a lot of the people I work with are wrangling with. And if we're, as is often the case, things change and suddenly you're in charge of more and different, and it's a different space, and you've got to try and pull teams together in a way that works. And the one thing I'd for what it's worth reflect on is there's so many different ways to get to the end goal nowadays. You've really got the opportunity to explore those different ways, bring in people from the outside that can bring in an outside view and give you a taster of it. But getting that core team right is something that here in our agency, we've taken 30 years, and over that time, there's been ups and downs where people go and come. But what we've realized now is a key part of our proposition was to say, look, we don't need to do it all. Actually, what's really important is that we own the mind share and the thinking and the strategy, and we care more about this than anyone else. We even like to think that we care more about it than you, our clients, but we then pull in those extra resources and those extra things that you need to do. And it's something that we've been working with a couple of client partners to help develop their resource, because we're now in a world where there's so many different things we're meant to be experts at as marketing leaders. We can't bullshit it. You can't go, oh, I'm also, and now I put my head of IT. It's nuts. So being able to have good people in those key positions is far more important than going, oh, I've got loads of people working for me. I mean, that's a vanity that just brings headaches, to
I
be
completely
honest.
agree. That's vanity versus sanity, right? It's one of those kind of debates. My team's quite small, but they're all experts in their field, and it's kind of the team that I wanted to grow. The team that I've got now is not the team when I joined. I've got a completely different. When I joined 5 years ago, those people, the two people that were there, are not with me, and that I've then grown a team from two people to sort of 7, 8, and then I've got a nice amount of external agencies around me for the specialist things that I need to do.
How are you guys employing technology now? So, obviously a big thing that we talk a lot about is the perception of technology solving all of our ills, and that's
Yeah.
obviously the promise. But how do you see that playing out within how you spend on marketing and how you resource stuff? Are you depending more on outsourced or AI, or on the whole, are you still traditional marketing that's pulling in that resource externally? How do you see that developing over
Bit of
the next
50-50 at
year?
the moment. Like I said, I always lean back to my relationship-led, digitally
Yeah.
enabled side of things. I have to remain true to that because that is what our industry is. So we will have a very events-led strategy. We'll do a lot of the face-to-face, but again, we can do that now through digital platforms. When we go out and meet some of the lenders or the brokers and we do these video interviews or we do tours of sites, that's a face-to-face interaction. So it starts with relationship, but then we communicate it through Instagram and we put that on our reels and we put that through our digital channels. So I think the best way to do it is a little bit of both. Make sure there's human in it, make sure the relationships are there, but you can communicate through various quick digital channels. In terms of kind of AI and things like that in the team, we use it a little. I think AI for me, I've always said that is use it for process. Like we don't use it for writing, but I think you can kind of, if you know what you want to say, it can be a good guide to help format things.
Does the business, has the business as a whole, I'm always fascinated in the actual fundamental product. Have they been employing AI in terms of their finance decision making or
No,
anything like that?
no,
No, nowhere near that. So
no.
it's all still, yeah, okay. Just
That
out
I
of
think that
interest,
would take a
deeper.
lot of like that almost.
Faith.
Yeah, like that's not what this industry is. Like it's looking at real people, real economy, and real decisions, and that has to be on a human element. And that's my opinion. There'll be other people across the industry that might say it can speed things up, it can kind of make improvements, but there are other areas that you can use AI for processes and kind of more digital tools that don't take away from the human element, looking at the person who needs that deal done and that case. And I don't think our business is quite true to that, and that's how we've built our reputation and our trust and our brands.
And I think that it's really been interesting talking about, because what it makes me realize is there's a lot of similarities in the professional services space around this relationship model
Yeah.
that is all consuming. And however hard people will tell us that AI is going to take over the world, there is something about authentic and something about human that increases in value. And we talk a lot about the value of both. And there's a similar sort of mindset here, which is there's the authentic and there's the simulated. And we talk about this idea that in the future, if you really think about and extrapolate where we're going, sure, there's loads of efficiencies and there's loads of brilliant things that can be gained from that. But in so doing, the value of authentic relationships and the value of that FaceTime and getting together will increase. And so we are seeing an increase in things like events and the things like which bring people together a lot more in terms of real film rather than AI film. But we're also seeing a huge increase in expectation on agencies from brands to reduce the cost of production, and probably businesses on teams should be quicker. You should know that. And it is working. So it's an exciting time. It's still a little Wild West, but I think we're finding our feet now as marketeers with it. So it's interesting to hear your take. I would love to know, I often ask on this of all of the people I meet, if there's a piece of advice or something that's been said to you over the years that you, I wouldn't say live your life by, might be a bit strong, but that resonates with you, that you think is relevant for this sort of audience.
So I don't know if it's advice. I've always had one personally.
Try me.
I don't know. So my personal one it's probably just for anybody. My dad told me when I was younger that nobody was ever going to pay for anything for me. So if I wanted it, I had to go and earn it. So I thought, oh,
great advice.
I like to travel a lot, so I better go and get a good job.
Yeah.
So there I was.
That's a hell of a motivator. Hunger is a hell of a motivator.
But then I worked with a guy, probably 7 or 8 years ago now. He's an amazing creative. We ended up just working together. He's actually worked with me on every rebrand I've ever done.
Wow. So he must be good.
Yeah, he came and ended up working with me and then did a rebrand, and then he went back sort of freelance, and then I got him to work with me on the Enra and the West One rebrands as well. Amazing guy. We're still good friends now. And like I said, I don't know if it's advice, but it's just something that's always sat with me. And he said, if you do something that you love every day, you will never work a day in your life.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good bit of passed down advice from 1,000 people. Do you want to name check and give him a shout out, this guy?
Yeah. His name is Tony Dobby.
Tony Dobby, well done for keeping her faith over multiple rebrands. You've obviously done a great job as a creative director or designer.
He was, very, very successful creative director. Excellent guy. And that just kind of made me think, you know what? I'm so grateful. I love my job. I love it. And I do kind of feel like that. So I then try and make sure that my team have the same feeling. If they don't love coming in every day, or if they don't love what I do, and I kind of take that personally. And that kind of made me think, now I'm like, do you know when people sit there and they're like, oh, my team are.
So let me ask you, how do you motivate? Because the reality is everyone's got up and down days. What tips could you give a marketing leader like me with a bunch of people around me? What things do you think work in terms of motivating that team and pulling people along on your mission?
Give people time. Listen, be a good listener. I think my role, we're like a very weird, quirky, dysfunctional family, my team. Everybody is wonderfully unique in their own way, but they're wonderfully intelligent in their own way. And balancing everybody's different personalities is fun, but I think because we're all so different, we all just get along. And I'm a bit like a weird mum, where I have to make sure that everybody feels okay, but I make sure we have really regular communications. I make sure that it's fun. I make sure that they can have, I think, like I said earlier, I want them to be creative. So that's when I've gone back out to the business. It's my job to protect them. It's my job to allow them to be creative and grow. And I want the business to come to them with a problem rather than telling them what to do. And I make sure that I push that message outwards so that they get the right time to do the job. I want them to love their job. Marketing's amazing. You can be so creative. So I want to listen to their problems, and I'm like, right, I'll go and fix that. I give them time.
So you want to facilitate them to do their best work, really?
Yeah, 100%.
I love
if
that.
they love what
That's
they
great.
do every day, they'll never do a day of work in their life.
One of our unedited guests, a guy called Paul Bolwell, was talking about something a bit different. He was talking about his own challenges and mental wellness and health, and we were talking about how that affects his team. And when I was reading between the lines of what he was saying something similar, which is, recognizing the differences in people, which is something that we all say, but actually, do we really do it? Do we really clock that? And when you do really do it and you realize that that is an absolute nutter in the corner, but when they're on point, and if you can get them to be on point all the time, they're brilliant at one specific thing. That's great. Let them be their best them. So there's some similarities there, and it's easier to do in smaller teams than big teams. But I think it's a great thing to aim for. Yeah.
I also know that I have to be in a good headspace myself. I'm naturally quite communicative. You can probably hear me around the office most days. And I know that if I come in at a 9 or a 10,
I'm getting that vibe.
I'll say hello to everybody. I say good morning to people. I ask how their day was. I'm interested in their lives. What did they do at the weekend? If I come in and I'm like silent, like the mood,
it affects other people.
It's huge. So I know that I go in, and if I bring the energy, if I make sure that I'm happy, I'm in a good place, I can push that out to everybody as well. So I'm very conscious of my...
Well, there is a saying that fits that, Haley. It's with great power comes great responsibility. And
I take that so seriously. I take that so seriously. I have so much care for these guys. Like, people look at a marketing leader, but you are nothing without the people that are sitting around you grafting. So my job is to make sure that they're happy while they do that, because we're all in it together. Like, we're excellent at what we do, but we're excellent because we do it together.
I love that. That's a great sentiment. I'm going to try you just before we wrap up on some quick fire questions. Okay.
Oh gosh.
You can choose one or the other. Okay. I'm going to say two things. You can choose one or the other. Only one of them. You can't go and go in the middle. Okay. Let's give it a go. There's only 4 of them. Creativity or data?
Data.
Ooh. Paid or earned?
Earned.
Okay. Agency or freelance?
Freelance.
Oh, ouch. Print or digital?
Oh, print. I'm old school.
Yes, girl. So we agreed on one of them. What I've loved about today, though, is actually there's a lot of similarities between how we work. So it's been really interesting. I really hope it's not the last time we talk.
No.
And I hope it will be the beginning of more conversations. But I wanted to round off just by saying thank you very much. But is there anything you're looking forward to? Anything else you want to talk about? Or if people are listening to this and they want to find out more about you and what you're doing, can they get in touch via LinkedIn? I mean, any opportunities? Need any new team members in your slim team?
Potentially, yeah. If anyone's an amazing copywriter in specialist finance and property, then let me know.
Boom. Well, actually, a very good copywriter interrupted our podcast earlier. So there you go. Well, that's great. So if you are an expert copywriter with experience in property, get in touch, and we'll put all of Haley's contact details, if she allows us to, not literally all of them, in the notes. But I just want to thank you very much for being part of an unedited conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me. No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a lovely and easy conversation, just to kind of chew the fat about marketing and just love it.
Hey, that's what we love here. See you later.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on another episode of Unedited. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode. Find all of our updates on your favourite social media and podcast platforms. Just search for the Unedited Podcast.